Good afternoon, travelers, and welcome to Manga Crypt, where we turn your favorite manga and anime characters into Magic the Gathering Commander decks. In today's episode, we're going to take a look at the manga Dungeon Meshi, or Delicious in Dungeon. Now, Senshi's just an old dwarf who happened to stumble across the party, helping him make some food out of monster parts from the dungeon. With 10 years of monster cooking expertise, this deck is going to be mainly focused on food and turning the monsters into food. To start off with our commander, Senji's going to be turning every other creature in the game into food artifacts in addition to their other types with a brand new commander from Bloomborough, Igra, Eater of Awe. Igra costs 3 colorless, 1 black, and 1 green. This is a really nice Golgari deck with a good even amount of card draw, token creation, and cards buffing Igra itself and other artifacts. Remember, all other creatures are food artifacts, which means cards like Steel Overseer are going to buff every single creature as long as Senshi's out. This deck is going to include a good amount of sacrificing, and I feel like Senshi would definitely be running a Nuka-Cola vending machine. Being able to sacrifice foods plays a huge role in this deck as well. Allows for some crazy combos, so we're going to have to put in a Viscera Seer, who's going to be this devious ass dude, and the Mushroom Watchdogs, which we will not be using to pull mandrakes out of the ground.
For example, now I know using a big bat instead of a dog is a stupid idea.
Both are stupid ideas, Marcel. Both. But instead, we are going to be feeding the food to the dogs to create treasure tokens. And how about instead of creating just a food or a treasure, we turn that into 3 with Academy Manufactor. The Earth Golems. If you would create a food, clue, or treasure token, instead create 1 of each. And when you bring in Camellia the Seed Micer, which would be the Warlock if the party had one, you create a 1/1 squirrel creature token for every sacrifice, which is also food, leading to both infinite treasure tokens and infinite 1/1s on those dogs. Somebody put them motherfuckers on a leash. This loop would also work with Experimental Confectioner, who is going to be Mizaru, who creates a 1/1 rat every time you sack a food. But speaking of party members, let's go ahead and show off Marcel as a 3 costing mana elf wizard taunting arbor mage with kicker 3. You may pay an additional 3, and if you do, it enters the battlefield. All creatures able to block target creature this turn do so. You're going to at least be able to knock out a few of the creatures you want to. This is going to be really good for your beefy commander Senshi and those dogs. After that, I suggest bringing in Acquisitions Expert, who is obviously Chillchuck, to force an opponent to reveal part of their hand based off how many party members you have. And you get to force them to throw that thing away. If you want to add more members to your party, we got the Shapeshifters for that as well, who can count as any of those party members you're missing. Fallen, the Cleric, able to sacrifice a creature to manifest the top part of your library. This is great considering more than a third of this deck is creatures. And for Izutsumi, she's going to be a Cauldron Familiar. The ability on her is absolutely crazy, with some of the cards before like the Seed Micer and something to sacrifice it with. You can sacrifice her as a food only to sacrifice one of the tokens you made to bring her back again, dealing 1 damage to all opponents and healing yourself. And for Laios, the Savvy Hunter, creating the food for Senshi to serve up and trading it in for card draw. And I just gotta mention the Prowling Geistcatcher real quick. I couldn't think of somebody to beat this creature, but with all this sacrificing creatures as foods going on, you can actually sacrifice them to exile and bring them back into play when this creature dies. Now for some of Senshi's equipment. Of course, we're going to need a dungeon map as we venture down. Can't forget that one. Also, the Horned Helm is quite literally the helmet he already wears, and he's going to be a whole lot stronger with Trample up his sleeve. Also, his Battle Axe, yet another Trample artifact. Now, Senshi may not be as comfortable wearing something like Cranial Plating, but we might just have to lock in. Some of these magic items are definitely a TPK preventer, and we do not want to die. Lyo's sword Kinsuke, the Nettle Cyst, a living weapon. Shambling suit is going to be the living armor here, getting a +1/+0 for each artifact you control. The mithril cooking knife, attaching for a +2 and death touch, adds the Vorpal sword. And here are the dwarves since you grew up with. They're going to be helping ramp up all the artifacts around here. Oh, and every time we make a food token, how about let's start ramping up those ingredients.
I can make bread with it! Bread! 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 Bread!
Peregrine Took is going to take the role of Kabru, party leader, making even more food. Maybe to donate to these rapacious guests, the orcs. Here's Shuro creating some food or a treasure token for each land drop. And the rest of his party are taking full advantage of the food tokens, with Tade, Sweet Tooth Scourge, Keen, Shuro's Butcher, Rin as Jaheira, Friend of the Forest, and Benichi Dori as Pippin. Now, if you need some more mana ramp, bring in the Walking Mushrooms as the Land of War Mentor and Elves, or even the Ice Golem, for 1 colorless mana for each artifact you control at the start of your turn, from Karn over here. Then after all that, you should surely have enough mana if you got Senshi out. Cast the Darksteel Forge. Every creature gets indestructible. Oh, and in response, I'ma bake you into a pie, buddy. We are chilling on the fillings, my guy. Now for some of these other spells. A few minor spoilers for the show if you haven't watched up to episode 14. I got Fallen the Chimera as a Planeswalker. Fallen the Fallen Chimera as a Planeswalker from Vraska Golgari Queen. I made Galadrim Ambush, I think I'm pronouncing that right, and to summon dragons from the Mad Mage. Thought that was pretty cool, although it is kind of confusing for a card to be red while the mana cost is green. But the ability's so similar, it's just like the show. I also made a really cool Dark Ritual, Cultivate, and Soul Ring, a custom land, and yeah, that's about it. The Senshi Delicious in Dungeon deck is going to cost you around $220, not too bad. And for my deck stat ratings, I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5 in speed. Not really that fast. I mean, the commander costs 5 mana. Strength, 4 out of 5. Bro, Senshi can build up quick. If you have the foods to sacrifice and get in your graveyard, that's a +2 for everyone in your graveyard. That's pretty strong. And I gotta give the creatures a 5 out of 5. I mean, there's 34 creatures in here. That's a lot. The spells, 2 out of 5. You aren't really relying on the spells for too much in the game. You're just relying on the spells to get your other stuff out. But the complexity of this deck, ooh, it can get pretty complicated. I'm not gonna lie, I've messed up a few times. You can mess up with some of those combos in there. It is pretty complicated, but it's not quite as complicated as I've seen some decks get. The Senshi deck gets an overall rating from me of a 3 out of 5. It's got 34 lands, 4 enchantments, 12 artifacts, 8 instants, 7 sorcery spells, and 32 creatures, 2 planeswalkers. The deck list is there in the description. Let me know in the comments below what deck you guys want to see next. I will see you guys next time. Hope you enjoy.
Dungeon food. To eat or be eaten. There is no hierarchy here. Only the simple concept that eating is a privilege of the living. Ah, dungeon food. Delicious in dungeon.